Faemderit, Minister, dear Ambassador, dear guests. I don't know how, but I was actually invited to give an opening remark in this panel, but nevertheless I will adapt to the discussions and I will give a key takeaways of so far what has been discussing. I would like to take a step back and look at from a macro level. Why are we discussing this? Science has actually proved that we have entered the spiral, which if it gets out of control, it will actually lead to a very serious problem, maybe a never-changing landscape of the Earth and the way that we do, and that is the climate change. We have relied on fossil fuels for development in the last 150 years, and we have exploited the fossil fuels without any regard for the environment and what are actually the consequences of it. At the beginning, we sure didn't know, but in the last 60, 70 years, the information regarding the use of the fossil fuel and what we are actually contributing to has only been confirmed time and again. So we are now working towards starting from the reason why we are all doing this is to curb the effects of the climate change and limit the increase of the Earth's surface temperature to this 1.5 up to 2, but we as the civil society prefer the 1.5 in order to be much more safer. This transition that we are talking about would have happened on its own. We are living in a world with finite resources, so we can never think that we can continue to use the fossil fuels how we have used it even in 100 years, because the reserves that the Earth has and how we are actually using it, by 2100, we will actually run out of it. But this transition has to be much more faster because of the reliability, insuitability of the fossil fuels to actually continue, and of course the repercussions on nature and on health of people. So the decarbonization is the road to actually reaching the climate neutrality for the region of the Western Balkans and actually make a cohesion between the Western Balkans and the EU in actually achieving the climate neutrality of the European continent. So this kind of stems from the EU Green Deal presented in December of 2019 by President von der Leyen, and in it included a green agenda for the Western Balkans. So the EU expressed openly that it wants to work with its partners in order to actually reach the common goals. Now, the effect and the way that the Western Balkans actually has in all of the climate saga is very limited. But as some of my co-panelists actually mentioned it earlier, the cost is actually too high. Until now, in the Western Balkans, we did not factor in how actually costly this production of electricity and energy based on the fossil fuels is costing us. One, because we do not have, the polluter does not pay, so there is no carbon pricing. And carbon pricing at the extent which would actually mean the proportionate actually amount of payment vis-a-vis how much we are actually polluting. The second one is that we never factored in how much public direct and indirect subsidies go into maintaining the fossil fuel business alive. And lastly, we never factored in the health costs on the people. And there are studies, Mr. Ambassadors, that tell us that even for countries like Kosovo, the money that actually citizens pay is from 100 million to 300 million of euros every year, because we have coal power plants which are not compliant with its national emission and reduction plans, as are within the Large Combustion Plant Directive. So if we factor in all of those costs, the electricity bill which we would actually receive at the end of the month in each of the countries in the Western Balkans would have been much higher. But now, the lost myth that the fossil fuel-based energy is cheap has been broken since the energy crisis, which has been fueled by the fossil fuel crisis, started last year. And now just reinforced with the Russian aggression over Ukraine, which limits the ability of the EU to actually import fossil fuels, and that has actually disrupted the energy markets. That is why today in Kosovo, if we import electricity, we import it at the price of 700 or 800 euros per megawatt hour, which is completely out of the reach and capability of these countries to actually pay, when we know that the price of the kilowatt hour was about 60 cents, if I'm not mistaken, in Kosovo. So this is about what we are talking. So the myth has been broken. The need to move towards sustainable and reliable energy sources is a must, because it is the most feasible, most economic, and most reliable way. Because if one thing the renewable energy has actually taught us during this crisis of 1.5 years so far, it's their ability to adapt to the crisis and how flexible the renewables actually had. The studies from the last year, when we had the initial gas crisis, showed how much the renewables actually cushioned by billions of dollars the cost of the crisis. I would like to come to the end of my intervention based on the framework which will allow us to actually reach this transition. As Mr. Cvec underlined earlier, we, the Western Balkan countries, are part of the Energy Community Treaty. And within this treaty, we are working in the cohesion between what is considered today the most advanced. We have our reservations, like has Europe, but advanced policy making in terms of energy transition. The adoption of the clean energy package within the Energy Community Treaty allows us to actually have a specific framework to deploy, to make a specific targets and reach those targets within the specific and credible plans to actually achieve it. So I would like to underline one of the remarks that we had also earlier in the earlier panel on the connectivity, and we hear a lot about the security of supply. Although there are many geopolitical issues within the Western Balkans, each of the Western Balkan countries must understand that they are not islands, that the regional cooperation is key, because we cannot actually manage this transition without each other's help. Of course, there need to be lifted the deadlocks that we have, the geopolitical ones, so we can actually have a free-floating electricity and energy between the countries, work on the market integration, market coupling, and regional integration to actually achieve why we are part of the energy community, to create a pan-European energy market. So these are the key issues that we actually need to address. So we need kind of a credible plans for this to reach these means. And national and energy and climate plans, which are kind of a threshold for the next 10 years, will allow us to actually, is a stepping stone to reach the climate neutrality by 2050. I'm finishing. I know I'm over my time. So we need to address all of the barriers that actually do not allow deployment of renewables, if they are regulatory, if they are financial, if there are subsidies in the fossil fuels, etc., or technical or environmental barriers. And one of the points that is not being discussed enough is the importance of the energy efficiency. We cannot build fast enough as much as we can save, especially now in the time of crisis. So now the first best thing, of course, is to work on deployment of renewables and utilizing of the electricity energy grids that we actually have, but actually save as much as possible in order to curb to curb all of this. I want to address one of the last issues that Mr. Quetsch said, that all of this transition will not be able to actually happen if it's not just for the people, for the environment, and for all the citizens of the Western Balkans and wider EU. Thank you very much.